And let's go to Jack. He's got the Cafferty file. Jack, you spent some quality time here in Iowa. You know this state. The people are great.
It's a wonderful place. I worked at WHO in Des Moines for 2.5 years, back right after they invented television. I think it was a long time ago, 1974 maybe. But the people of Iowa treated me and my family extremely well. Highest literacy rate in the nation. Good folks, and you're in good company out there. As the race for the Republican nomination heats up, there is one candidate who has been largely ignored by the mainstream media. Shame on us. He deserves more attention from us than he's getting. Ron Paul makes a lot of sense, and more people ought to listen to him. The Texas congressman has visionary ideas about where the country ought to be going and what sea changes are necessary in order for the U.S. to continue being a superpower. When Ron Paul ran for the Republican nomination in 2008, he talked about the economy imploding, the untenable nature of the national debt, the eventual destruction of our currency, and a limited role for government. He showed tremendous fundraising ability and had an absolutely rabid base of support. Problem was, it was too small. In the 4 years since then, a lot of the things Ron Paul warned us about have happened. We're deeper in debt, a lot deeper. The dollar is worth quite a bit less. The federal government increasingly dysfunctional, and the country is more divided maybe than at any time since the Civil War. Yes, Ron Paul is a conservative, but he's not one of those who goes around hitting people over the head with his Bible. And looking at the current batch of Republican wannabes, especially in light of some of the stuff that's come out of Michelle Bachmann and Rick Perry's mouth in the last 24 hours, Ron Paul stands out as maybe the only adult in the room. In politics, just like in life, it's often the timing that makes the difference. In the case of Ron Paul, it seems events over the last 4 years have finally caught up with the candidate. Paul's message hasn't changed, but the urgency of what he's saying has increased dramatically. And it seems like this time, more people may be listening. He came within an eyelash of finishing first in the Iowa straw poll, less than 200 votes behind Michelle Bachmann out of nearly 17,000 votes cast. Again, a fact that was largely overlooked by the mainstream media. Michelle Bachmann has no chance of being the next president of the United States. Maybe Ron Paul should be. Here's the question. Is Ron Paul the only grown-up running for president on the Republican side? Go to cnn.com/Cafferty file and post a comment on my blog, or go to our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. You know, the media's got to start listening and covering this guy a little bit more, Wolf. He may be a player this time around.
Well, he already is a player. Ron Paul certainly has influenced the other Republican candidates. 4 years ago, as you correctly point out, he was basically saying the same thing. But now more and more Republicans are beginning to say the same thing that he's been saying for a while. All right, you're going to get a ton of answers, a ton of views on this question, Jack. Stand by. I'm anxious to hear what our viewers think. Bates, let's go to Jack Cafferty, though. He's got the Cafferty file. Jack.
A bucolic setting. Question this hour is Ron Paul the only grown-up running for president on the Republican side? Jarrett writes, yes. The real question is, are Americans ready to put on their big boy pants and accept some of the truths Ron Paul has been telling us for decades? We're broke. Our wars are a racket. The Fed is destroying our currency. The Congress is ripping us off. The threat of terrorism has been exaggerated. We're never going to agree on everything, so let's focus on agreeing on one thing, that we should all be free. Andy writes, the only grown-up, I don't know. What I do know is he gets little or no media coverage even after he practically tied Michelle Bachmann in the Ames straw poll, and that's her home turf. Jeff writes, an adult would not advocate some of the insane policies that Ron Paul does, though he is deserving of respect for the consistency of his views. Tony writes, not only is Dr. Paul the only grown-up in the race, he's the only candidate who is mature enough to tell us the truth, even if it's unpleasant. After listening to him, I'm reminded that there are still good leaders out there who actually want us to be free and live in peace. Refreshing to hear an honest, unscripted, heartfelt candidate who speaks passionately and truthfully about the issues that matter to us all. Tommy writes from North Carolina on Facebook, Ron Paul is not the only adult in the Republican race, just the only honest one. And Tony in Topeka writes, he might not be the only adult, but I can't think of another. By the way, Jack, I think the real question should be, why is the media not covering Congressman Paul? Jon Stewart did an amazing piece on his Daily Show last night. Sometimes I wonder whose side the media is on. If you want to read more about this, you'll find it on my blog, cnn.com/Cafferty file, or through our post on the Situation Room's Facebook page. Wolf?
I know he has a lot of ardent, passionate supporters. I hear from them every single day. Jack, thanks very much for that question.